Hey, everybody, welcome back to Too Many Men. My name is Alison Lucan, and I am delighted to, I feel like I open up the internet, I look at the kind of content I love to explore, and who do I see being demanded by the people? Recently on What Chaos? It is the incredible, brilliant, I don't know how she does it. She's hilarious, and then she drops like, bam, super nugget of super knowledge. Sara Civian, how the hell are you today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Yeah, we were with can we call it a brother podcast? It's
Yeah, I
something
like
like
that.
that
That's
with
good.
What Chaos. We're all on it. We have lots of friends of the pods, whatever you want to call them. But I love being in studio with them. I don't know. I've always looked up to DJ and Pete in Boston, and they're hard to keep up with. Like, you have to be quick. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, you have to make sure your joke lands if you're with them. So it's a fun challenge being on that show.
Well, if there's anyone who's up for that, it is you, my friend. You are brilliant
Oh.
and hilarious. We, of course, would not be Too Many Men with folks. This is a simple one, but a big one. Birthday girl, Shayna Goldman. And my God, Shayna, did you look fantastic at your
I
party?
know.
Oh my God, thank you. It's like this is my Eras tour, and I got to make 5 outfits, and I did it in 1 week, and I'm scrambling to the last minute. But like when you guys go to your Taylor Swift concerts, like, oh my God, do I have chains and studs and grommets? And I have learned to do things that that's what I love about the wrestling outfits. They teach me things. So like, listen, you're gonna be wearing tulle skirts with fucking grommeted belts. Like, let's go. This is all Reputation era.
Did you
I
hear
didn't.
Jackie dropping her her wrestling references in her NHL work?
I love it. We got Taylor Swift references last game and now the wrestling references, and it's like the perfect blend of us.
I can't say how refreshing she is enough. Like, I just think she's so bright and vibrant and genuine. Like, she's not faking the bubbliness. Like, she's so enthusiastic about what she does. And it's easy at this point to get a little tired of it, or to like the hours she's pulling. I don't know. It's
Oh
just,
my
she
God.
always invigorates the broadcast. So good for her.
And the all denim duster for game
Yes.
three. I mean,
I
like,
love,
what an
she's
elite
herself.
pull. What an
Yes.
elite pull. But also, like, what I really was, I was noticing this in particular last night. Like, I think she is such an expert at matching the vibe, right? Like, when
Yeah.
she's talking to people, she perfectly matches the vibe. And Jackie has told us she'll come on the pod, and we're very excited about that. So we'll talk about that more too. But it is time for us to talk our little thoughts. And that means, Sara, what time is it? Oh, she's ready. Look at her. Look at her go.
It's time. The tribe has spoken, and it is time for Bito News.
We're like a product placement. Like you're in your influencer era right now, influencing us about too many men.
Please, please, we need sponsors.
Time for a bit of news. We don't have sponsors, but we have more wonderful friends of the pod like Benny Drawbars, who gave us that beautiful branded drum. And actually, I was at a doctor's appointment yesterday, and they know that I work for the Kraken, and they were like, who's the guy on the organ? He's amazing. So Benny is extending his reach far and wide, as he well should. But it is Bit O News time. And my friends, we have basically just a slew of coaching decisions that have been made in the past week. So rather than break down each of them, unless you want to, I'm going to turn it over to my elite co-host here. I'm going to go through the major coaching changes, and then you guys can tell me which, if any, we want to talk about. So Seattle hires Dan Bielema, and he will be leaving Coachella, coming up to the NHL once again. Sheldon Keefe, who left Toronto, is now going to be the bench boss in New Jersey. And Scott Arniel is your next head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. The only other coaching move is a departure that happened quietly, seems interesting, but maybe not a lot to pay attention to yet. And that is that Mike Yeo has left the Canucks. So 3 hires and 1 departure. Which, if any, do you want to talk about, Sara?
None. Like, good for them. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Shayna, do any of these capture your attention?
You know what? Did you guys see the Sheldon Keefe quote?
The one about
Uh-oh.
the rest of the NHL, that
Yeah,
one?
it was a tremendous honor to coach the Maple Leafs. There's a lot that goes into that. I've had a number of well-established coaches in the league reach out to say that I should be happy now that I get to coach in the real NHL. Toronto's quite unique. It's not like the rest of the league. And it's like, why? Because they don't have media that gives a shit about your every single movement versus Toronto, where it's like if you go to the store on a game day, you're going to get yelled at because it's like, why are you shopping?
Yeah, it's interesting. But you know what? I mean, I've heard some people say they actually take offense to it. Like, I don't know that I mind it. I also don't know that I mind a coach saying like Toronto is wild and like maybe just to be a coach, I just want to be a coach right now in New
Especially
Jersey.
first time coach, right? First time NHL coach, you're in Toronto.
It's like we
That's
all
a wake-up
criticized
call.
him for not being able to handle it. Okay, now he's not going to handle it. He's going to go do something else. So I feel like that's fair to say. If all the backlash at him, which was pretty deserved in my opinion, like he's not. I know he's all class. Remember when he put out that statement and everyone's quote tweeting it, all class, classy, classy. Classy doesn't pay my X's and O's bills. Classy doesn't keep the lights on at Scotiabank Arena, okay? We got an operation to run here. I am curious to see how he will look in a different environment.
Yeah, that it's funny. Other than the drama of it, I don't think that one moves the needle much for me. I am gonna say the Scott Arniel one is a choice. Like it's been years. I'm going to give him that. But if anyone was paying attention when this guy was in Columbus, it wasn't even the coaching decisions. It's the way he treated players and media. So like, I think the Scott Arniel one is going to be one I'm most curious to watch because yes, he filled in this year with Bones being out, but like, that's because it was Bones' system. It wasn't like Scott Arniel suddenly truly became the head coach. So that's one I am watching for sure.
Did you
I know.
see Mike Commodore's tweet shitting on him?
Yes.
That's the kiss of death. So watch out for that.
And like he wasn't some expert assistant coach. And I guess it's tricky because in the NHL, like I feel like it's different from other sports where we don't always know the true value of an assistant coach. But it's like if you're not the one that run, like you might be just handed a shitty system and you have to try to make it work. And we don't always know that. But also like if you can't be a good assistant coach and handle one job, like do I trust you to manage a full bench? And like I watched him a lot in New York, and I, granted, head coach was Lane Vigneault, who I don't think is a great head coach. I don't think he did a good job as an assistant coach at all, and everything got so much better when he left that I'm like, you look at his whole track record, and then I go, that's the pick, especially when they invested so much in the right now. Not for me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And then, of course, this is something that has taken over parts of the internet, and that is not necessarily just the Dan Bylsma hiring, which I think is fine for Seattle, but it opens up a door potentially for a change in roles for Jess Campbell, who has been the assistant coach in Coachella, the first female assistant coach behind an AHL bench. And listen, I already ranted to you guys, so I'm going to say my piece. I also said this on the Jeff Merrick show yesterday. I'm going to say my piece, and then I want to hear what you guys have to say. Like, women in hockey have such a rough, weird road, right? Like, you're either the first or you're not the first. And if you're the first, everyone's watching you. And if you mess up, it's like, see, you were just a gratuity hire, and that proves you can't do it. And we want to celebrate women achieving things, but we also want it to become commonplace. But what's frustrating me here is Jess Campbell's an immensely talented individual. I truly, truly believe she has the chops to continue to work her way up the coaching ladder. And if she wants to be a head coach in the NHL someday, I would consider her to be a prime candidate as she decides that she is ready and an organization decides she's ready. But the question that was asked in the media availability was, is Jess Campbell being considered for a different role? And when Dan answered it, he made sure to answer it and say that both assistants in Coachella were being looked at, and that's Jess Campbell and Stu Bickle. And all of a sudden, this has turned into headlines of like, Jess Campbell's going to be the next, assistant NHL coach, and she's going to be the first woman, blah, 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 which would be amazing. But like, it has to be the right fit for her, and it has to be the right fit for the organization. And I'm not saying she can't do it, but like, I feel like we're setting her up to fail, because now if she doesn't get this job, everyone's going to be like, oh, see, they aren't going to do it just because she's a woman, or, oh, see, they did it just because she's a woman. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, people were tweeting about it as if it had happened. It made graphics. I've seen like 14
Yeah.
graphics. I'm
It's
like,
wild.
did this happen? Like, I
Right.
thought I missed the announcement for real. So I totally get what you're saying. And it's just, it feels like a losing battle no matter what. That's what frees me in the end when I think about how do we frame this? It doesn't matter. Like, the hater's gonna hate. Like, it doesn't matter because they're gonna shit on her anyway. So I think people with a brain can look at the situation and be like, wow, several folks jumped the gun on this and people are excited. Let's think about them in good faith. And then if she doesn't get it, it's not because she's a woman. If she gets it, it's not because she's a woman. It's because she's fit for the job. I am just sick. Like, when are we going to move past the discourse? Like, when is it I guess when these things happen, right? So we have to move through this muddy, annoying ass discourse until this is more commonplace and it's not her fault. It's not our fault. It's on the people in the positions of power with the way they speak about it and with the decisions they make, period.
Yeah. And it's like, I also, I want to try and say this right. Like, again, I have the utmost respect for Jess. I think she's incredible. Players think rave about her. Her bosses and her colleagues rave about her. But like, we're diminishing her by being like, oh, well, is the woman going to get the job? Like, we're making the narrative, is the woman going to get the job versus like, oh, who are you looking at? What are some qualified candidates? Like, when we continue to make it about whether you're a woman or a man or LGBTQ or a person of color, like, and we go there first, I feel like it diminishes the evaluation that should actually be happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like Clay Travis. Like, you're opening it up for him to ask a stupid ass question. Sorry, Shayna, go.
No, you're right. And also, we don't stand for Stu Bickle erasure. We cannot forget him in this.
Yeah.
Okay, like the
I feel
man,
kind of bad for him, right? Like,
New York
he's like, I'm right
icon
here.
over here. I'm glad he was getting hyped up again recently when you had the Ranger Devil line brawl because they were like, look, and Stu Bickle was a part of that, and you're like, see, that is where my brain goes with him. But like, here's the thing, it is exciting to hear a name in it, but like you, Sarah, I went online and I saw 2 graphics and I was like, wait, and they're from big companies, and I'm like, immediately go to our chat and I'm like, we would have a text from Allison. We would know something if this happened. And so I quickly went to your feed, Allison. I saw the exact quote and I'm like, that is very different. I was like, I'm sharing that one. I get the excitement to run with it, but yeah, like if she doesn't get picked, everyone's going to freak out. The best case scenario, honestly, to me, I'm so curious if the whole staff's going to move up because I look at it and I go, Dan Bilesma's a retread, right? And I feel like a lot's getting made of that. But I also look at it and I go, but he's a retread who isn't coming from a team where he got fired 5 minutes ago and doesn't even have the time to adjust his ways. He seems like he's learned a lot from his last 2 NHL tenures, and he was really successful with Coachella. And it's like, well, if they work there and they're familiar with the organization, maybe it helps to have everyone do it. Or, maybe I think we're forgetting too, like the importance of someone staying in Coachella and keeping that familiarity after they've been they're still in the playoffs right now rolling, right? Do you want to have that transitional coach?
With like Shane Wright and with all of the talent coming up, I think it's especially important too to have some in-house familiarity. And they already made really clearly, look at this team's success. They've already made really good hires with the AHL and with the whole organization. So it's really like, why not expand on that?
Yeah. And who's to say one won't become the head coach of AHL, one becomes the assistant coach in the NHL? That could happen. We don't know. And it's always interesting too, because like, we don't know which route is more successful to take, right? Like we've seen coaches come up from both ranks. We've seen it from college ranks. Like it'll be interesting to see how it goes, especially with the franchise that doesn't have a long history. Like it's all exciting. And I feel like we need to like step back and enjoy the whole picture instead of running with one misleading quote.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, to summarize, we are so hardcore pro Jess Campbell. She is amazing, but be very careful in your reporting. Make sure you are reporting the facts and also try not to make your story just about someone's gender. So peace and blessings. Other changes that happened in NHL organizations, but a little bit above the bench bosses, was in the front office. In a flurry of activity late last week and then confirmed yesterday, 2 days ago, Don Waddell, former GM of the Carolina Hurricanes, was rumored to be talking to other organizations. Then he resigns, I guess is technically what we're calling it. Eric Tulsky, go Team Tulsky, is now interim GM in Carolina, and Waddell has moved on. He is the new GM, president of hockey operations, and alternate governor for the Columbus Blue Jackets. We were talking about some shade. Don Waddell was in there too, basically saying that when he was taking a tour of what Columbus had to offer and all that was going on, that it was a lot more than he had ever seen. He wasn't used to it. We know that Carolina has had its struggles, but there are some big shakeups into organizations. Sara, in your past, when you did cover just the Hurricanes, I know you saw a little bit of how Waddell operates. We've all three of us had the opportunity to pay attention to Tulsky, and we're big fans of his. But what do you make of these moves? First for Carolina, again, Tulsky is still interim, and then Waddell leaving. What are any concerns you might have for the impact on Carolina that way? And what can he bring to Columbus?
Well, I think it probably felt so fucking good for him to say that. He's been holding things like that in for a while and having to be kind of the face of the Hurricanes franchise when he's been in hockey forever. He's been in the old boys club. That was the number one benefit that the Hurricanes got from him as their face of the front office. And that's nothing to scoff at. Like, he's had these connections where he can kind of pick up Tom Dundon's mistakes, right? Because Tom Dundon is this billionaire outsider that's in his little tracksuits and like is not giving a fuck. Like, the amount of times I've talked to Tom Dundon, I'm like, do you worry about, for example, contention with Sebastian Aho's agent during the offer sheet saga? He goes, I don't give a fuck what he thinks about me. I'm like, that's not going to fly in hockey. And then then Don Waddell, excuse me, swoops in with his smiling grandpa face from Michigan. He's like, I'm a pure Michigander, and he didn't mean that. And we like our group, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he kind of smoothed out all the edges and did so many things that maybe he didn't have to do anywhere else as uniquely as the GM of the Hurricanes. And he was not making that much money doing it. And I think it all started when I don't know if this was off the record, so sorry, but Tom Dundon didn't even know you had to give them a contract. He wanted them to be like non-contracted, his employees. So he was begrudgingly giving Don Waddell this contract a few years back and let him go interview with the Minnesota Wild. And Waddell was not happy about that. He's like, I am old. I just want to be secure with my family. I don't want to be doing all this extra work, jumping through these hoops. So this time he was like, I'm not going to ask them to match it. I'm not going to be like, I'm bejeweled. Best believe I'm still bejeweled. And they see that and they recognize that in me. Like, I'm sick of this shit. I think the interactions I've had with Don, you can tell he's holding his tongue. You can tell Rod Brindamore is holding his tongue. And that slipped through the cracks when reports of his contract were coming out. That's Tom Dundon. That's not Don Waddell. Don was sick of being looked at in this light at the end of his career for not enough money. Like, and then here comes Eric Tulsky. It's like, the GM of the Hurricanes has to be somebody young who is proving themselves for the first time, because they're not getting paid that much. They are having to bend over backwards. They're having to do these not weird, but unconventional things. That's perfect for Eric Tulsky, who has been the brains of this operation. But what relationships, like, you wonder how that's going to impact with the old boys club. That's all I got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, we've talked about this before, like a GM in the NHL doesn't look the same in every organization, because every GM has different strengths and every GM has areas that they need to support. And that's hopefully what you look for in your AGMs. And I agree. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how someone as brilliant and as wise and as good-hearted as Eric Tulsky is going to bring in an ability to connect to the quote unquote old white man hockey culture. Shayna, from your perspective, Sara just alluded to this too. There had to be some creative roster management in Carolina, given some of the directives they got from ownership. What do you think the opportunity is that Don Waddell can bring to Columbus? This is a club that arguably has some of the best young talent coming up over the next few years.
It's going to be really interesting because he has to balance a roster with right now players who were signed maybe prematurely with up and coming young talent, while trying to fix the culture that needs a lot of help. So it's not going to be an easy task. And I feel like the Canes was like a nice primer for him to now jump into this, right? Because we know he can come up with cost-effective contracts around core players. We know he can identify a team's strengths and like how the Canes have their system and they can interchange players. Like, you also needed to find the right players to be interchanged within that. So I'm curious how he brings that to Columbus, because that could be really interesting, right? Like, how do you look at it and go, okay, we're going to find centers to be stopgaps for the young guys to help everyone out, but still give these guys opportunities. And like, I don't know fully how you handle it for your Columbus. I look at, even the coaching staff and I have questions, but I think the fact that Waddell has shown a willingness to look at things a different way and use every bit of information he has. You look at the analytics department that Carolina built up, led by Tulsky, and how it infiltrated the entire organization. Columbus has that. So I'm curious how he uses that to his advantage, or what adjustments they make there as well, because if you're willing to use it, that's step one. And now if you have a good foundation for it, like, you have to be creative. Maybe my favorite thing from his presser, besides the shade, was him talking about Elvis Merzlikins, because that is a huge question mark. And I like that he said, like, hey, I tried to trade for him a couple years ago. He acknowledged his skill. He acknowledged what's gone on in his personal life, and how basically it's his job. It's a failure if you don't maximize him and get him back to that. And it felt like someone really committed to doing that, which I feel like he needs, right? I feel like this goaltender needs the help and support that an organization can offer. And if he's going to bring that, like, that is a huge step for them. So I'm intrigued, at least. You know, it was a refreshing presser from someone I didn't expect it to be, just like because he's been around hockey forever.
100%.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he had some good quips, and I really enjoyed. I think his energy and his sense of humor is going to be a good help to the organization, and should mesh nicely with John Davidson, who looks like he's still sticking around, but maybe reducing his role. And I think that's a nice little fit up front. We'll see what they can do. Well, we had new coaches, we had new GMs, and now, my friends, we have a new first-time champion. If you weren't watching Game 5 of the PWHL final last night, I don't know what's wrong with you. It wasn't necessarily as even as maybe people had hoped. Minnesota shuts out Boston to claim the first ever title. It was great to see. It was great to see. I was at a local hockey bar here, and that game was on just as much as Game 4 in Edmonton was on all the TVs. It was outstanding. I did enjoy the trophy presentation itself, pulling it out of a Tiffany box, making sure there were white gloves. I thought it took way too freaking long for them to put the trophy in Kendall Coyne's hands, and we didn't need 18,000 people to speak. But overall, a culminating great finish to the first ever season for this one league for pro women's hockey. Really exciting stuff. We've talked about how Minnesota was the team that everyone expected to be out first, and instead they come back and win it all. Shayna, what are your big takeaways, either from Game 5 or just from the entire season or final in total?
I mean, it's kind of funny because they were the team that got picked to go up against Toronto. Like, oh, you're the weakest link here, when you started the season and they were one of the best. They were one of the best almost all year. So I think that makes it exciting. I also love that it's Minnesota because, like, so I didn't get to watch Game 4 because we had a party going on here. There was like pay-per-views on the TV for wrestling, and like I didn't even watch a lick of it. Like, I was not there. So watching a hockey game was not going to happen, because then I would not have been social or talk to anyone. But I'm like getting the alerts on my phone, and Minnesota won the game in overtime. The goal gets reviewed, and then Alina Mueller scores to extend the series. So the fact that Minnesota almost was the champions, thanks to Sophie Jakes, like, now you do it for real. I don't know. It makes it all the more interesting. Like, for real this time, now they're the champs. I agree with you. It was a little bit long to get the trophy. I hope that's a year one only thing, but all of it, like, I loved when Kendall Coyne went up there and she took the trophy, and you had your traditional laps with the cup and the whole team going nuts. Like, it was what you wanted to see. If it felt great. It's a new era. Like, we can enjoy all the championships past with the Isabel Cup and go back through the CWHL, but this felt special. It was really nice to see. And I'm excited to see where we're going to go from here, because it was a rush of a first season with its flaws, but I feel like a lot of learning on the fly to improve it. So, okay, you got year one. Now let's everyone cook this off season and see what we're going to do for year two. And I'm sure we'll have names and logos and everything, but it was so special. And for Taylor Heisey to get the MVP honor, she was the first overall pick. She was so great this year. Like, when she was healthy, you saw the difference of the team when she wasn't there, like all of it. Like, it's a promising start.
Sara, what were some highlights for you? I thought it seemed like there was some drama up in Boston around ticket sales, even for this final game, but it was a great crowd. It was great to see little girls holding up their signs and everyone just really enjoying it, merch and people supporting the teams in the stands. What were your takeaways from this season, or if it's just Game 5 or the final series in total?
Yeah, it was packed, I guess, with the scalpers, you can say. I mean, everybody only scalps tickets if they're in demand. So they were sold out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What a moment for Kendall Coyne. She's been so involved in, passionate about this league, and she's a Northeastern product and she gets to hold it up in her old stomping grounds. Pretty iconic, but I was upset. I don't know, not a great showing from Hillary Knight, our friend of the pod, just been an up and down season for her. So you wonder like what the future is with that. Upsetting ending for the Bostons, but the Taylor Heisey storyline and all of the storylines really like picking your opponent and the opponent wins. It's like what the game's going absolutely buck wild. Like just what more could you ask for?
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to everyone involved. I was with some friends watching the game and we were even just commenting on just it shouldn't be this big a deal, but just like, hey, look, we can easily watch this game at a bar. Hey, look, the broadcast is good. Hey, look, there are things making this look like it should have looked all along. So it's really, really exciting. And as you said, I'm excited to see what comes next. Well, there's another league that is still playing. So let's get into that with our hockey talk. 2 conference finals going on in the NHL, and both are tied at 2-2. Let's start in the West because that is the game that went down last night. I tell you, these 2 games, Edmonton and Dallas, the last 2, I don't know what to make of it, right? Like I can make a good case, like this just shows parity. This just shows that these are the 2 teams that should be here, or if it's something else. But these last 2 games, one team in game 3, it was Edmonton. In game 4, it was Dallas. One team comes out and looks like they are just going to roll and like take the game and just storm through and get an advantage. And then the other team comes back and just completely controls play and wins it all. So Dallas does that in games 3, takes a 2-1 series lead. And then Edmonton, after going down 2-0, I really thought they were going to pull Skinner, comes back and evens it up with 5 unanswered goals. Big concern because Chris Tanev left the game, which you don't want to see. Darnell Nurse, who was on ice for the first 2 goals against, I was like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry, does come back and make a good showing. Chris Knobloch making some interesting coaching changes, which this guy might actually be a really good coach. It's been interesting. Sara, what are you taking away from this series right now? What's surprising you maybe?
Just, I guess it's surprising me that I don't like watching good hockey. Like I need a team to be worse. Like I can't do this. I'm even though you hear coming back from 5, having 5 unanswered goals, you should be thrilled. And I'm just watching this like there he fucking is, Leon Draisaitl. Like I just like don't. I'm trying so hard to find a compelling angle, and all I have is Bailey, the social media manager's amazing outfits and taking her baby, she's pregnant, and like that's what I care about. Like, can we have a more compelling storyline other than the teams are good? Like, I just can't do it. It's really annoying me. I'm so disengaged. I'm trying so hard. And here I am, just like, I don't know. Somebody needs to do like Taylor Lautner needs to come out and do a backflip like it's the Eras Tour. I need to get back into this.
Shayna, what's your take on in particular, these last 2 games where one team comes out to dominate and then the other team answers so strongly? Is it that these teams are evenly matched? Is there something else going on? Could you pick a favorite for this series right now?
I still lean the Stars, but it's tough to say, like without Tanev, I'm like, now it's more even, right? Because with Tanev, I don't think it's that even. But to me, it's just interesting to see how not just coaches are adjusting between and players are adjusting between games, but within games, which is what you need to do. Like I am loving like they come out and they just one team dominates and the next period it's like, no, this is my fucking show. And then they come like I'm in it. Like I'm enjoying the series. It's a series I hoped we would get based on the regular season matchups. And I feel like it's reaching that level of what like the high expectations I set for it. And it's all about entertaining me. So there you go. But no, like I think Chris Knobloch is a really good coach. I liked what he did in Hartford, and it's nice to see him get his moment because I feel like he's been like going up the ranks for a while, and I thought that there are other opportunities for him to get the jump to the NHL, and it didn't happen. So here it is, and he's getting it on the biggest stage with some of the bold adjustments he's making between games, and it's so interesting to see like how things are going to work out with Edmonton because I think we're all waiting for the Oilers to collapse. I feel like you watch games
Right.
and you go, who's going to screw up? Is it going to be we're screaming about CC Nurse, or are we going to be screaming about Stuart Skinner? And then it's how can Bessie, Leon, and Connor save them? And I like that that wasn't the narrative as much yesterday. And it's interesting to see, like they're saying, can Kulak play his offside to play with Nurse to settle the waters because there's so much pressure on him. And it's like the hockey gods truly hate him with that second goal against because it really
Yeah.
like he didn't screw up that bad. It's just such poor luck. So
I actually put the second goal on Skinner. Skinner should have sealed the
Yeah,
post,
Yeah,
honestly.
absolutely.
I'm with you on
Shayna,
that.
your point about waiting for the Oilers to collapse is exactly why I'm not enjoying this, I think, because that's exactly where my head's at. I'm like, I don't trust this, but
You can't.
I
You
can't let the
can't.
other, like, when's the other shoe gonna fall? I keep betting against them and I keep being completely wrong. So it's just like, I don't like being wrong, I guess. I don't like this team. I've never liked this team, and people are like responding to me about it, and I think that's fair. I think Oilers fans can get mad at me because the whole time I've been really annoyed with them and I've been wrong. So that's that.
It's like there's a difference between like we love Hyman, we love McDavid, we love Basti Leon, but then you're like it stops. And like Bouchard and Ekholm were fun. You're like, cool, that's a 5-man unit you can put out. What
I
about the
like
rest of the
Warren
game?
Fogle, and he isn't doing shit. So tell me about that.
There you
I,
go.
that's the thing. You're so right. Like I can't decide so I've been tracking response goals in the playoffs. And so Edmonton, now granted, Edmonton is one of 4 teams to still be playing a lot of games. So I'm probably going to switch to percentages here soon because totals are skewed by amount of games played. But like, is Edmonton good at response goals because it shows that they can seize momentum, which is the colloquial reason why we would look at response goals? Or is it just because they have people who can do quick strike scoring and that's what happens? I don't know.
I think it's both with them, but I kind of lean towards the latter, right?
Yeah, well,
Like
exactly.
it's a tough one.
But
If
then you
another team
say,
had it, it'd be different. But when we see who's scoring some of the response goals too.
right. And then you say too, well, of course, Edmonton's power play is going to be good, but it's actually their penalty kill that's good. So like, are they actually
Yeah.
good? I don't know. It's
Every narrative is like turning on its head, but it's also kind of right. Like there's no vibe whatsoever.
And they've like round 1, you were like, okay, they're kind of struggling at 5-on-5 and the power play is doing the work. And then since then it's not the case, right? You're like, okay. They've had moments of crushing it at 5-on-5. And it's similar to the regular season. Like when they were going through it, it was their 5-on-5 play that, their rush back into the playoff picture was all about 5-on-5 play. The power play was good, but it wasn't dominant, great. Like it should have been better. They should have been converting more. And I feel like that's the case right now. And it's like, it's forcing us to think about Edmonton differently, which is fun, right? Like that's how you want it to be. You don't want it that you just sit there and you're like, they're on the power play, they're going to score. But I don't know. I have so many questions about them still, and I don't think it's going to be answered this year versus the Stars. They do something you're like, oh, I expect that to happen, right? You expect Jason Robertson to have his all-star moment. He's having it. You expect Rupe Hintz to come back and be a difference maker. I feel like the Oilers, I don't know what to expect still somehow.
Yeah, it's wild, but it is, it is good hockey, but it's hard to sort it all out. It doesn't make sense. We're getting bizarro Edmonton in some weird way. The other series that's going on in the East is, of course, between the Rangers and the Panthers. Again, tied 2-2. This has also been a weird series, but for different reasons. There's been a whole narrative about, again, you need Matt Rempe to come back in. But I know. But what's so fascinating to me is, and I'm curious if this will actually start to bring, if you can find the people to foster it the right way, bring the conversation. Like we finally got the general public onto, of course, more shots, more shot attempts increases your likelihood to win. But the whole discourse then around shot quality versus shot volume, because the Rangers are being like massively outshot in pretty much every game. But then go and look at the totals at the end of the game for shot quality. And a lot of times these two teams are neck and neck. Shayna, this is a series that's happening in your backyard. What are the narratives that you're following? What are the ingredients to what's making this series so tight in your opinion?
It's wild. Like the games that are being won are not the games I expect. Like game 3, I would have expected Florida to win. And then the Rangers, I was like, oh, maybe they'll win game 4. And like, based on the way you're watching the game, right? So one thing to watch for me is the Rangers defense pairs. And they've kind of been like a theme the whole postseason because the Rangers have rolled out Miller Trouba forever, right? For a couple of years now. And then they made that late season adjustment. And in round 1, you're like, okay, this makes sense. But in round 2, Schneider Miller had to take on a really hefty workload because Fox and Lindgren are not right. Like, I don't like speculating on injuries, but like, I am very suspicious that Fox got hurt with that knee-on-knee against Jensen in round 1, and something's not right there. And Lindgren's everything is broken, okay? The man cannot go through a game without bleeding. So, like, you saw Schneider Miller taking on more, and then you have Gustafsson, Trouba in sheltered minutes, and they got eaten alive against the Canes. So they swapped it, but you put Trouba back with Miller, and when we're not even talking about the flying elbows and things like that, I feel like Miller looks more unstable with Trouba. Maybe it's because he thinks he has to do more. And sometimes we don't, like safe as death. You don't want a safe. You're going, well, Schneider's safer than Trouba. That doesn't mean he's better. But I just look at it and I'm like, but he is. So they're switching it back tonight, which is going to be super interesting because I think the mistakes Trouba's been making have been really egregious. And you're seeing him go for hits instead of making plays at times and just making the wrong reads. So that's going to be something to watch if that can help limit the danger because they're going to get those top matchups.
Sara, what is important to you in terms of the series? There are people who say, oh, Florida should easily be controlling this. Again, if they're looking at shot totals and maybe making some broad brush statements about the talent on the roster versus who's not stepping up for the Rangers right now. But is this series scored currently at 2-2 where you think it should be based on what these teams are doing on the ice?
Yeah, it seriously is neck and neck and in different ways, like you pointed out, just where the Rangers have been more clutch of a team all season. And how do you evaluate that? I mean, there's expected goals, there's who in the lineup is doing these. I mean, you look at someone like Vincent Trocheck, Barclay Goodrow, it's like these people that are accessories, but are still better than, I'm sorry, not going to stir the pot, but like Carolina Hurricanes second line. Like everybody on the Rangers is better than like Carolina Hurricanes second line. Like I don't know where I'm going with that, but they're just a good team. They are the President's Trophy winners for a reason. And the Panthers are more motivated by spite. They're interesting. They've got depth too, but then you go Bobrovsky, Shesterkin. I think Bobrovsky's been a little rough. And people that should be stepping up for the Panthers are stepping up, but then you got that and you've got the opposite. It's like the two, they're looking at each other in a mirror kind of. And that's why it's been so interesting to me. This has been the compelling series.
Who is your money on still at this point with, again, a second series coming down to a final 3-game outcome, Shayna?
I'm so torn on that. Because I'm like, I think Alexi Lafreniere and Shesterkin are getting the Rangers very far in Trocheck, but I'm like,
Trocheck's been great.
He's been great. And I think Lafreniere's been great too. Like, I love it. Everyone with their like, oh, he's such a bust narrative. Like, he's crushed it at all season at 5-on-5. Imagine if he got power play time like a true first overall pick does. And if he was maximized sooner, he's crushing it and he's making these like individual effort goals. But there's a reason we have doubts about a team. Like, they can be opportunistic. They can capitalize on their chances. But when they don't, you're going, it's Shesterkin holding them in. And he's a goalie that can steal a series. He can steal a lot of things. He's incredible. But I'm getting those flashbacks to the Henrik Lundqvist era of like, where's your star players? Helping your goalie out a little bit. Because it's like, you're going to see the goalie try to do more. And we saw that, right? When Shesterkin made the play, what was that, game 2, and they lost, he made the play off the board. Like, he shouldn't have done that. And I wonder if he's like, I have to do more because no one else is. And that is my biggest concern here that can lead to mistakes if the goaltending goes, like, I have to be more aggressive and I have to step up and I have to help the breakout, which is all stuff he can do. But if you do it too much, it might burn you. That I'm like, I'm very torn on how this is going to go, but I definitely think it's going 7. I don't think anyone's winning 2 in a row. I think we're getting 2 more overtime games.
So much overtime.
Guess who's going to game 7 if it happens?
Fucking right.
Yours truly.
Sara Civian.
That's why we're rooting for it.
That
is exactly why we're rooting for it.
Amazing. Sara, do you have a better feel for who will come out the winner in the series with 3 to go?
I just feel like, why wouldn't it be the Rangers? Like the question I'm not asking myself is why would it? It's why wouldn't it? I just don't see them losing 7 games, like in a 7-game series.
Interesting. Well, by the time we talk next, there's a chance that one or both of these series will be over, and we will be talking to you about a Stanley Cup preview. We will watch and see. But what we will do for now, while we wait to see which team can come out ahead from the East and from the West, is wrap up this episode with our very favorite game as we work through the NHL award finalists in Fuck, Marry, Kill. And as we move through them in the order in which they were announced, this week we are looking at the Lady Bing. Sara Civian, you are up first in terms of talking about the player who demonstrates sportsmanship, gentlemanly conduct, and ability. So basically the nicest player who's still effective on the ice. Fuck, Marry, Kill, Sara, Austin Matthews, Elias Pettersson, or Jacob Slavin?
I always have to kill Austin Matthews in this situation. I think some of his antics and like the trophy is so ambiguous that I take off ice things into consideration. And I know that he didn't like kill somebody, but he did have that incident with that female police officer. So I never vote for him for the Lady Bing. And that's just my personal decision. I am going to marry Jacob Slavin. I think it's harder as a defenseman who eats so many minutes to have this. I know it's just a year, like we're just evaluating on the year, but year after year, he is so few penalties racked up. Like, I don't know, you just have to handle the way he plays too with the stick work, and he credits his sister for teaching him that. And I'm gonna fuck Pettersson. Like, he really stepped up this season. He was very engaged physically too. So I'm proud of him for that.
Shayna.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm gonna kill Matthews. I had 5 other players ahead of him on my ballot, and he was not one of them. And yeah, he played against top competition this year, but I just think there were other options that stood out to me a little bit more. I will fuck Pettersson. What he did this year, amazing. He goes against top defenders as well and keeps his cool, which is so important. And he does it year after year. You always see him with like not just a good penalty differential, but he draws a ton of penalties, which is something I try to look at for this. And I will marry Slavin. Like, for me, when I was trying to figure out who to pick for this one, and it's like the hardest one, I like players who go up against top competition, have to shut them down. Like, I had Noah Cates up there very high, and I know people are like, but he didn't even score much. And it's like, I don't care about that. I feel like if you can keep your cool while you're not scoring much and still maintain your defensive presence, that's important to me. And if you don't play the game very physically as a defenseman and you keep your cool, like there are so many, if you're not going to be hitting and stuff, you're going to be using your stick a lot. And there's a lot of ways you can take penalties doing that. So if you can be really smart with your positioning, you can make it work.
Hi,
See,
Rangoon.
She heard you.
we have agreement.
Look at, oh,
Queenie.
look at, she's so sweet. Well, friends, again, we have the Too Many Men hat trick. I agree. I like a defender being in this conversation because, as you said, Shayna, I think it's too easy and perhaps a little lazy to just go down the line and say who had the fewest penalties and who had the most points. And that's your top 5 picks in that order. So I really like Slavin for that reason. I also will say that we did find out too after the fact, and even though the votes were already cast, Pettersson didn't have a great, finish to the season, but we know he was injured as well.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who's now the highest paid player on the team. And I think for the most part, even with an injury, he did step up and was a huge part of why Vancouver did what they did this year. I do think, let me ask you this and we'll wrap up after this, but some people will say out there that this is an award too, that maybe officials should have a say in, not just media, because they're the ones that truly understand what's actually happening on the ice. Should officials have a vote or a say in maybe on the finalists or picking the finalists? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to vote, why not speak to the media a little bit more often? I say pop off.
Yeah, pop off.
All right. Well, there you go. The games are dwindling down. The women's side is finished for the season, but we still have NHL play to go. We have the AHL Calder Cup finals in the conference finals going on, and they will go for their championship soon as well. We'll be keeping an eye on all of it, as well as any other news that is interesting to us, because that's the kind of stuff we talk about. If you want to chat with us in the interim till we record again, you can always follow us on social. We're at 2_much_man on Instagram, Twitter, and on the YouTube. Lord knows why people want to watch the video with my face looking the way it is this morning, but here we are.
Do not put yourself down. You're gorgeous.
If you want to represent Too Many Men outside of the internet, you can get your own merch at toomanymenmerch.com. Hats, glasses, sweatshirts, t-shirts. Why not have a nice set of layers for this lovely summer that is breaking out across the country? Who's to say? And until we talk again, we ask that you all each please do something every day, no matter how big or small, to make sure that hockey truly is for everyone. We will talk to y'all soon.
Love ya.
Bye.